Hello, my name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions.
And I'm Proven Paradox, a guy with a lot of questions.
And you're listening to Bright on Buddhism, a podcast where we discuss East Asian Buddhism, answering listener-submitted questions from listeners just like you, and introducing concepts of Buddhism that you may or may not be familiar with in a casual, conversational setting. Enjoy.
Here, what does the Buddha say about the heavens? What's out there? What would one see if they went there?
The Buddha would say that there are limitless, countless, and innumerable realms, heavens, hells, and pure lands in the 10 directions. There are countless universes all in the realm of samsara, which are marked by non-self, impermanence, and suffering.
Can we see all those places with our naked eyes, or are they meditative realms, or realms for beings higher than us?
The enlightened eye can see all. To the unenlightened eye, however, there is only one realm, the realm which one immediately occupies. This, however, is a clouded, incomplete, and ignorant view.
I hope through training to be able to see these realms for myself one day. They seem equally as marvelous, beautiful, and awe-inspiring as this one, if not more so.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Bright on Buddhism. This week we will be discussing Buddhist cosmology. What is Buddhist cosmology? How does that play out in ritual and practice? How does it change over time? We hope you enjoy.
So, what is Buddhist cosmology?
I think that in answering this question, it's important to discuss the question of what a cosmology is in the first place. For our intents and purposes, a cosmology is an answer to the question of the nature and origin of the universe that we inhabit. What is the beginning of the universe? Why are there planets and stars and galaxies and gravity and electromagnetism? And how does all this end? Or does it all end? These are the questions at the front of cosmology. Now in the modern day, we have data-supported answers to these questions. They're not definitive, absolute, and universal answers because that's not what science deals in, but they are supported by data, which actually is what science deals in. I should mention, however, that these data are, in terms of human culture, incredibly recent, and even still developing as we speak. But that does not mean that human beings have been asking these questions only in the last century. No, people have been wondering about space since there have been people. Before the modern astronomical explanations of the universe, there have been countless religious, speculative, and philosophical explanations of it. These are not backed by data as much as they are supported by purported divine authority, supposedly superior intellectual insight, or some other means of making others believe that you know the seemingly unknowable. So that is our backdrop for explaining cosmology in Buddhism. We are asking what the Buddhists have said was the origin, nature, and possible end of the universe. In answering this question, before I get into specifics, let's not forget the 3 seals of existence. We've discussed these before, and I think that they're cosmological in their own way, in a similar sense that Newton's laws of thermodynamics diagnose the nature and behavior of the universe and are therefore cosmological. The 3 seals of existence are non-self, suffering, and impermanence. Those will color how we see the Buddhist cosmology unfold, because those are at the heart of all doctrines of cosmology that we encounter. So there are many facets and many versions of Buddhist cosmology that we've already discussed, and they're probably going to come back here in this discussion. These include the 6 realms and the 10 realms of existence. We've also talked about samsara, the Tushita heaven, the pure lands, the narakas, etc. We can think broadly of samsara as the universe that we occupy, and all the other places that I listed, Tushita heaven, pure lands, narakas, etc., they are occupying samsara. They are inside of samsara. Or, in the case of pure lands, they're adjacent to it. As we've seen before, pure lands are difficult to place in the cosmology, but we'll leave that discussion aside for now. So as not to get ahead of ourselves, we will start with early Buddhism and work our way forward. Early Buddhism holds the 6 realms doctrine, and within each realm, there are many, many divisions or different types of realms. In the realm of the Hell Dwellers, there are several levels of narakas, which we've discussed that each have different characteristics. There are hot and cold narakas. There are narakas of being crushed by incredible weight, or of being burned or drowned, or something like that, specific to whatever kind of punishment the person occupying that place is going through. In the realm of hungry ghosts, there are a few types of realms and existences you can have, which results in different forms of hungry ghosts with different abilities or different ailments that they have. In the realm of animals, there's every type of animal, from cats to elephants to insects to whales. In the realm of asuras and devas, there are countless heavens and heavenly realms in which the asuras and devas live, and they're all organized according to the karmic history of the occupant. Something that's important to note is that time is included in this question of cosmology. This will come up a little bit later, but it's important to keep in mind, how are these realms, how is this cosmology answering the question of how does time pass? Does it ever pass differently? What is time? Etc. The way that time functions in the 6 realms cosmology is that lifespans are longest at the bottom and at the top. It is a fascinatingly relativistic way to understand time and samsara and suffering. In places where suffering and pain are the highest, lifetime is longest because it's a punishment, it's karmic retribution. In places where suffering and pain are the lowest, lifetime is also the longest because it's a karmic reward for good acts done in the past. In the middle, which is where humans, animals, insects kind of are, lifespans are the shortest. This is allegedly why some insects, according to the Buddhists, only live as long as like 24 hours in some cases. Either way, the 6 realms is widely held in early Buddhism and into early Mahayana Buddhism as well. However, as Mahayana develops and travels across East Asia, cosmology gets increasingly more complicated and philosophical, and actually just trippy, for lack of a better word. We've also talked about the 10 realms, which are the 6 realms plus the realm of the Arhats, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and fully realized Buddhas. This is one of the more simple additions to that 6 realms cosmology. However, things get so complicated and variable that it's difficult to mention all of them or discuss all of them in detail in one single episode. And so we'll no doubt come back to this question as we continue to discuss different sects of Buddhism in detail and what they believe. But just to give a quick example of one of the Mahayana cosmologies that's popular in East Asia, I'll take a moment to explain the doctrine of Ichinen Sanzen, which is not in itself a cosmology, but actually contains a cosmology within it. We've talked about this before in the context of Tendai or Tiantai Buddhism, but it merits a little bit more discussion here because it's super complicated and fascinating. Ichinen Sanzen is a Japanese Tendai Buddhist doctrine which translates to 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. A single thought moment is one single instant of consciousness, awareness, mindfulness, thought, etc. And the 3,000 realms are overlaid in that single instant all the time. So let's dive in and see what these realms are. This all starts from the 10 realms, which we've discussed before. These are the regular 6 realms from earlier Buddhism, plus the extra 4 realms that get added on in later Mahayana Buddhism. Mutually possessed within each one of the 10 realms is the other 10 realms. This makes sense because allegedly, we can see hell dwellers, hungry ghosts, animals, asuras, devas, arhats, pratyeka Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and fully realized Buddhas in our own realm, the realm of humans. 10 times 10 equals 100, so we are up to 100 out of 3,000 realms. Let's keep that in mind and zoom back out a bit. There is this idea in Tendai Buddhism that all reality is marked by the 10 suchnesses, or the 10 factors. This is a doctrine that we see in the Lotus Sutra, and a part of it that we haven't read yet but intend to. And these are the 10 immutable characteristics of every single small d dharma in reality. Remember, a small d dharma is just any constituent of reality. These 10 suchnesses, these 10 immutable characteristics, are appearance, nature, entity, power, influence, internal cause, relation, latent effect, manifest effect, and consistency from beginning to end. Everything in reality that arises, that we see, that we can experience, has those 10 characteristics no matter what. All of these 10 characteristics pervade everything within those 10 realms that we talked about, which are interpenetrated by the other 10 realms, so our total is now up to 1,000. Additionally, there are 3 capacities in which sentient beings exist. They exist as physical objects that take up space and have weight and make a physical mark on the world they live in. They exist as things that are alive and sentient and conscious, that perceive themselves and perceive other things. And they exist as a factor of an environment. They are within and a part of an environment. All sentient beings are marked by these three capacities. Therefore, the realms of sentient beings total out to 3,000. These 3,000, through interrelatedness, through interpenetration, through mindfulness and awareness, and simply by nature of the universe, are present and accessible in every single instant in which a sentient being is actually sentient.
So all of that is kind of zooming into a single moment. I've also been reading very slowly the Buddhist Cosmos by, I'll try this name, Punnadhammo Mahathero?
Yeah, that's the first resource on our Works Cited.
Yeah, I've been reading that, and one of the first things this book describes is going the opposite direction, zooming out rather than zooming in, like we were with the 3,000 thought moments. Whereas when you zoom out, the earliest versions, the versions that this book is talking about, describes kind of a lattice of essentially infinite numbers of worlds, infinite instances of samsara that are going through the cycle of creation and destruction over and over again in a way that I found really interesting, because there's so many details going on, and then the last detail is also this is reflected incountably many times. So in addition to getting a whole lot to discover in a single thought moment, if you zoom outward, there's also an arbitrary amount to discover.
Yes. The Mahayana in particular likes to play with these giant numbers that we've seen in the Mahayana Sutras that we've read and discussed. They'll say something like, and then the Buddha did something that took, 82,000 kalpas. Or they'll say that this statue in this Pure Land is 185,000 nayutas long or something like that. And all of that is reflecting this zooming out that you're talking about to try and grasp infinity. One of the things about cosmology that I've seen commonly among science and religion and philosophy and speculation is trying to grasp something that's infinite, something that is immeasurable, innumerable, uncountable. And Buddhism is not any different from the rest in trying to do that. And in fact, there's been a lot of people who, I don't personally agree with terribly much, but who make an argument that parallel universe theory reflects Buddhist doctrine. There are Buddhists that say this is no different than parallel universe theory because they want their doctrine to be elevated to the level of science. And then there are scientists who say this is the same thing as this Buddhist cosmology that you were just mentioning because they want their science to be supported ideologically by religion. We've talked in other episodes about how that is a particular practice that may or may not be problematic, but the parallels are, at least on a cursory level, very visible to the naked eye. When you say there's like an interlacing lattice of infinite realities, infinite worlds, infinite realms that are all doing samsara, all being samsara, and they're all multiplied infinitely, and they're all going through these things at every scale, you can really see a lot of parallels. But it is important that we mention that one of the things about Buddhist cosmology that is important to realize is that it is internally consistent at every scale. That's going to become important whenever we talk about time, in the sense of how does time factor into all of this. The immediate shortest amount of time that you can think of, an instant that is just one instant of one instant, in that same instant is allegedly supposed to be all of the same things that you can access, that you can believe, that you can experience, that you can understand and comprehend in 3 kalpas, in 3 mahakalpas, 3 great long eons that, are some innumerable number of years. And so it's important to note that whether you zoom out or zoom in, it's going to be internally consistent, and it's going to contain all of these innumerable realms that we're talking about here. That's something that takes a long time to grasp. It takes a long time to meditate and understand how that actually works and what sort of laws governing the universe or what sort of bits of the Dharma can support an argument like that. Like, how can you say that X idea, concept, is consistent and carries out and is supported at infinitely small time or infinitely large time. That's especially confusing when it comes to things like emptiness and impermanence. But I'll leave that for a different discussion. But I think that it's important to note that that's the argument that's being made here.
So let's get back to the script. How does Buddhist cosmology affect ritual and practice?
There's a great deal of ritual and practice for accessing and traveling to and between the realms of the universe. In fact, I would argue that all Buddhist ritual and practice deals with the issue of traversing this cosmology according to the Dharma, with a capital D, the teaching of the Buddha. The entire goal, if it can be said that there is one in Buddhism, is to go from this realm we live in to a better one. We could be going to the Tushita heaven, we could be going to a Pure Land, we could be going to the realm of the Asuras and the Devas, or we could be exiting realms as a concept altogether. But ultimately, the idea is to start in this one and go to somewhere else. So this kind of practice and ritual includes meditation to understand and comprehend and experience the true nature of reality and the universe as it is, not as we incorrectly believe it to be. This includes the recitation and copying of sutras, which are collectively the Dharma itself, but written down. This includes merit transfer as part of a blessing or on the occasion of the death of somebody, which is meant to propel everyone involved in the ritual to a better place than they're currently at now. All of these practices, as we have mentioned, deal with improving karma, which is what propels us through this cosmology and the cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation. If the karma that's propelling us is overall bad, we end up in a lower realm. And if the karma that is propelling us is overall good, we go to a higher realm. If we learn to act akarmically, which means to act in a way that does not increase, decrease, or maintain our karma, we have broken free of that cycle of reincarnation and of samsara. We've become a Buddha, and we have exited realms as a concept altogether. I think that that is the ultimate goal of fully realized Buddhahood and fully realized nirvana without any remainder.
So how do these ideas change over time?
One component that I mentioned briefly is the issue of time. We've talked about how the numbers of heavens and what is all there in them and how to get to them has changed as early Buddhism became Mahayana Buddhism. But we have not discussed the issue of time as it relates to all of this. Remember that time is a cosmological issue up for discussion as well, and it's important to understand it in the Buddhist context, because it gets quite complicated over the course of history as well. In Buddhism, if one is to view time linearly, then it is argued that it has no beginning and it has no end. When the Buddha is asked about the beginning of samsara, he can't come up with an answer. There is no beginning, then, to samsara, and the only chance of an end to samsara is really if every single sentient being attains nirvana without remainder and exits samsara. And there are several arguments as to whether or not that is possible. I'll leave that for another discussion, because there's different sects who think something about that, who make specific arguments for why certain types of people can't reach nirvana without remainder, and there's others that think that everyone can. That's a whole different idea that we don't need to get into right now. However, I would challenge the listener, and Buddhism would too, to move away from a linear, or what I would call sequential, view of time. Instead of sequentiality, time in Buddhism, especially Mahayana Buddhism, is emergent. Now, sequentiality and emergence are not mutually exclusive, but they are very different. I'll do some explaining here. In sequentiality, event A happens. It has a beginning, a duration, and an end. The beginning happens at time mark 1, the middle happens at time mark 2, and the end at time mark 3. And time marks 1 through 3 are each individually mutually exclusive. They are never 100% exactly the same as any other, and they move in one direction, forward. You can't go from 3 to 2. 3 is not the same as 2 or the same as 1. It only moves in sequence 1, 2, 3. In emergence, every single instant emerges with certain qualities. This doesn't really speak to the sequence of events that happen, but it does speak to how reality moves. Which of these qualities is emphasized changes considerably over the course of Buddhism's development in Asia, but they include the 12 links of dependent origination: ignorance, causing karmic formations, causing consciousness, causing name and form, causing sense faculties, causing sense contact, causing sensation, causing craving, causing grasping, causing becoming, causing rebirth, causing old age and death. So what's important to note here is that in this 12 links of dependent origination system, reality as we experience it happens from a foundation of ignorance. Because we have a view of reality that is ignorant of its true nature, that is paved over of what we actually are and what time and reality actually are, because of that, we have karmic formations, we have consciousness, we have the ability to sense, we have sight, smell, taste, touch, sound, and cognition. And those senses come into contact with stuff in reality, causing sense contact. Sense contact causes sensation, sensation being pleasure or pain. Sensation causes craving for pleasure and craving for the absence of pain. This causes grasping, or you might say like behaving such that you get more pleasure and avoid more pain. And this is what becoming is. This is what sentient beings in samsara are. Because we do this grasping, we become in reality, right? And we are stuck in this samsaric cycle, which is rebirth, which is marked by suffering, which is marked by old age and death. So this is one of the ways that we can think of time emergently rather than sequentially. Every single moment, every single instant is this emerging, is this cycle happening and perpetuating itself. There are also those schools of Buddhism which include the 10 suchnesses and emphasize those as the emergence of time, as we've mentioned before. All of these different systems are also marked by the 3 seals of existence: non-self, suffering, and permanence. These doctrines all develop from a linear or sequential view of time, and they transform into an emergent view of time. For example, in Zen Buddhism, it is believed that sentient beings are not separate or not dual from time, they're not distinct from time, and so therefore they are also emergent in the same way that time is, due to dependent origination and due to these 10 suchnesses. And they believe that it is within our grasp to cease this emergence and attain nirvana, to cut off the cycle at any one of those points, to cut it off at ignorance, to cut it off at karmic formations, to cut it off at sense faculties, etc., and attain enlightenment and attain nirvana without any remainder. Lotus Sutra Buddhism emphasizes the 10 realms aspect, or I guess I should say the 3,000 realms aspect, and they've even gone so far to psychologize the 10 realms. For example, the realm of animals is the realm of animality and anger and ferociousness. The realm of devas is the realm of happiness, and there's different characteristics for each of the 10 realms. But ultimately, all of this plays into a view of time as emergent. These are characteristics of time's emergence and our emergence within it, as time, such that as soon as every single sentient being attains enlightenment, time stops. Because time is the emergence of sentient beings in samsara. Using words like sentient beings and time whenever the argument is that sentient beings and time are non-dual, they are non-distinct, makes it difficult to explain how they are non-dual and non-distinct. But if this is something that you meditate on enough, allegedly this is something that you can come to an understanding of, and you can theoretically just end time for yourself. Just cease becoming, cease old age and death, cease ignorance, cease sensation or consciousness.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion of the Buddhist cosmologies. Join us next week where we will discuss Maitreya, who is also known in China as Milei and in Japan as Miroku. Who is Maitreya/Milei/Miroku? What are some stories about him? What sort of devotional texts, rituals are there for him? We hope to see you there, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening. See you next time. My name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions and the voice of Hearer.
And I'm Dox, editor, question asker, and voice of Hermit.
And this has been Bright on Buddhism. Thank you for listening. If you like our podcast, or if you have a question you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider leaving a comment or review, subscribing, or joining us on social media. Email us at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com. Tweet us at Bright Buddhism, and join us on our Discord server, The Hidden Sangha, link in description. As always, citations and resources for this episode can be found in the show notes. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you very much.